Another piece of legislation, which it seems to me that everyone I talk to outside Victoria can see it's not really about gay conversion at all, is the so-called gay conversion bans. I'd be interested in your comments. I mean, does anybody actually do this anymore anyway? I mean, wasn't it chasing something that pretty much is not there? But more importantly, it seems to me that far from unintended consequences, this bill actually has far-reaching consequences that are intended in other areas. I heard someone comment the other day that in Victoria now, it's quite legal for you to remonstrate with your teenage child if they want a tattoo and you don't think they should have it. But if they present to you concerns over their gender, unless you are completely affirmative, you may very well find that even as a parent, you're in deep legal trouble.
Yes. So it's complicated, but Victoria, the short answer is Victoria has gone way overboard compared to the rest of the world in trying to criminalise and also subject to a sort of this massive civil enforcement mechanism that they've got running through the Human Rights Commission. Any conduct which is directed towards a person on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity, which is intended to induce the person to change or suppress their sexual orientation. And here's the kicker, regardless of whether the person has consented to the conduct or not. Regardless of whether the person has consented to the conduct. Now, conduct simply means conduct. It includes a conversation. It includes praying with someone. So what it covers is I won't use you, John. So someone comes to me and says, I'm struggling with certain feelings about my sexual orientation. Would you pray with me about that? I really don't want these feelings. Could you pray that God would take them away? This is a hypothetical, I'll make this up. But if I do that and I pray that with them, it's a breach of the Act. That's a conversion or suppression practice because it's conduct directed towards a person on the basis of their sexual orientation or their feelings, which is intended to change them or induce them to change. And so that if that caused injury, that would be a criminal offence if I was negligent about that. And in any event, the Human Rights Commission, regardless of whether any injury was caused, could come after me for engaging in a change or suppression practice. And as I said, it is utterly irrelevant from the point of view of the law that the person asked me to pray with them. Change it around. I'm a counsellor. Someone comes and says, there may be perfectly legitimate reasons for asking this question. You might be a married person or have been in a stable unmarried relationship for many years. You might have kids and now you're in your 30s or your 40s and you're starting to get feelings which you haven't had since you were a teenager about attraction to, let's say, the same sex. Let's say you're in an opposite sex relationship. But you could flip the example. You could be in a same sex relationship and now you're starting to have attractions to someone of the opposite sex. And in either case, you really don't want them because you don't want to blow up your existing relationship and the prior commitments that you've made to your partner, be it same sex or opposite sex partner. So you go to a psychiatrist or you go to a counsellor or you go to a pastor or an imam and you ask for counsel or prayer. If that counsel or prayer goes anywhere near in encouraging you or inducing you to sort of try to put those feelings aside and focus on your existing partner and family, it's a change or suppression practice. And it's utterly irrelevant that you went and asked for that. It's irrelevant that you consented to it. So this
Isn't
law...
that to deny agency? Isn't that
course,
actually very demeaning to people?
It's extraordinarily demeaning to people. And I should say the Institute for Civil Society, which is the think tank that I run, we did a survey of all of these laws around the world. There's about 24 of them. I can't remember. I've got the details are on our website, i4cs.com.au, if people want to go and have a look. There's about 24 of these laws around the world. And in every other law, maybe 28, in every other law, it only applies to people under 18. So an adult, anybody over 18, is free to go and seek counsel, psychiatry, prayer, whatever from anybody. But in Victoria, only Victoria knows that its adults can't be trusted to go and ask for this sort of help. Only Victoria in the whole world. So it boggles my mind that a so-called progressive, government in Victoria could say to adults, no, sorry, you can't go and seek help, you can't seek prayer, you can't seek counsel, you can't seek psychiatry if your purpose in doing that is to seek help, not to with unwanted feelings about sexual orientation or about gender identity. Now, there may be a case for people under 18. Canada has said it's people under 16 in some jurisdictions. So because you've got a potential power imbalance there and that sort of thing. But you're right, John, it denies people's agency. And because of the enormous breadth of the prohibition, it's frightening. Victoria is also the only state which has added the word suppression in there. So it's an illegal practice to induce someone to change. That's common across these other jurisdictions for people under 18, But Victoria has added in change or suppress. Now, what does it mean to engage in conduct which encourages someone to suppress their sexual orientation or their gender identity? Well, it would be your classic Muslim or Christian or Orthodox Jewish counsel to say, do not act on these feelings outside of marriage. Would that mean that's just standard counsel to be chaste or abstain from sexual conduct, same-sex or otherwise, outside of marriage? And indeed, they would usually say only heterosexual conduct and only heterosexual conduct in marriage. That would be the standard counsel of those three, the orthodox branches of those three religions. That sounds to me a bit like suppressing, doesn't it? I'm counselling you to suppress your orientation because they've now changed the definition of sexual orientation to include sexual relations or activity with people of the same sex or the other sex or both sexes. So what was orientation now seems to involve conduct, but that's another complexity in there as well. And then the third part about this is we've brought in gender identity. So it's not just about sexual orientation, it's about the gender identity of a person. Now, there are real issues around people who have gender dysphoria. But there's also real issues, and they need to be dealt with sensitively and carefully by people who know what they're doing in terms of psychological counselling, medical treatment, and so on. And there's debates around how to do that best. But what does it mean to encourage someone to suppress their gender identity? I may be feeling that I'm in the wrong body, but I'm not sure. What's my gender identity at this stage? I don't know. My 13-year-old girl daughter is saying this to me. Do I have to affirm her? Do I have to take her to a clinic which will affirm her and move her on immediately into cross-sex puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones? Because that's one treatment model that's out there. If I don't do that, am I suppressing her? Am I going to be challenged by the Human Rights Commission as engaging in an illegal practice, taken to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal and have an enforcement order made against me? Possibly. So this is the hideous overbreadth of this law, that it deals with people over 18, that it deals with people about suppression, and that it deals with, it intrudes itself into the vexed question of gender dysphoria and what is the best treatment model. That's a question for medical practitioners and psychiatrists. It's not a question on which the Parliament of any state has any great wisdom. So why is the Parliament saying, we know best? And it actually says, if you are affirming someone in a gender transition, go for it. But if you're doing anything else, change your suppression practice.
You've got the Keira Bell versus Tavistock case in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
Now, Keira Bell was a young lady concerned about her gender. She started to take suppression medication and then change hormones. She's now in her 20s. She speaks with a deep voice, has to shave, and wishes that she had been counselled. She says, I mightn't have listened, but I wish I'd been counselled as to what it might mean.
Yes, and she's
unlikely to ever be able to have children, for example.
Yeah, so she's
but it wasn't explained.
A regretter and detransitioner, having gone through that.
But in Victoria, the very wish that she now expresses as an adult is denied by the law.
Correct.
It would be illegal.
Yes.
That is unbelievably bad law.
Yes.
In my view.
It is effectively, although it says that you can, give support and affirmation to people and help them with explore their identity and so on, it's very clearly leaning in only one way, which is assisting people or encouraging them to transition, but not the other way. So yes, we're going to, I'll say something else very important in a moment, but I think we're going to see as a result of this law the endorsement of an affirmation process for people. And we do have a bit of a flood of rapid onset or late onset adolescent gender dysphoria. And there's controversy about how that should be managed. There are some clinics which say, well, we'll just believe what you say and we'll put you on puberty blockers and then move you through. And there are other, the more traditional means has been watchful waiting, which is to say, let's just sit with it for a while, try to see if there's any other comorbidities causing depression or stress or anxieties for you, treat those issues and see how this goes. On the basis of 6 studies that are out there that have never been controverted, that on average 80% of young people with childhood gender dysphoria, it is resolved during puberty with the hormones that come with puberty. Now, obviously, that means that on average 20% of people don't resolve, and they may well go on to transition. So this is not an anti-transition argument, and it's also not an argument that says this is simple. I think it must be heartbreakingly difficult for people who feel they're in the wrong body, and it must be heartbreakingly difficult for their parents and others who care for them to deal with this. But the answer, whatever the answer is, it's to be dealt with, I think, by the person, with the family, and with appropriate medical help. It's not a matter for the Parliament to tilt the scales and say we're in favour of transitioning and there's a legal threat if you don't affirm that. That is just wrong law. But that's the law.
It ignores the adults out there who have been through this and now say we wish we'd been respected enough. There's no other way of putting it. To have been presented with a balanced set of arguments about the likely outcomes.
Correct. It also doesn't take any account of that group of people who, the group you've just mentioned, the ones who wish they hadn't, but also in terms of sexual orientation change. For most of us, our sexual orientation is reasonably fixed after puberty, homosexual or heterosexual. But for a substantial minority, something like 19% of women and 9% of men, it can change over the life. So you can have sometimes, they're not bisexual in the sense that they flip from night to night, but over the course of their life, their sexual orientation may change according to the nature of the relationships they have with different people. So this legislation is based on the ideological proposition stated by the Attorney-General, nobody can change their sexual orientation. Well, that's just not true. The social science data says a minority of people can. And you can read that. Lisa Diamond is a same-sex attracted female professor of sociology, and she's published her studies on this, saying that yes, and then the Australian data on Australian sexual health, which is all, you can find this on the I4CS website, brings this out as well. There is a minority of people who can change. So, there's an ideological push here to say nobody can change, but some people can change, and at least for that minority of people, they should have the right to go and seek counsel and medical help and so on about whether they want to change that way or that way. And people involved in the very difficult world of gender dysphoria should be able to access that as well and not have the law tell them what they can and can't do.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you value vital conversations like this one, please like, share, subscribe, and join the conversation.